It sounds like a horror movie. Stephen King didn't write this thing, did he? The winter that wouldn't die. Still another storm is delivering a triple whammy: snow, ice, and rain.
It sure is, Pat. More than 100 million Americans in 24 states are facing treacherous roads and other dangers. Heather Sells has the story.
It's the second winter storm to hit this week, and in the Midwest, that means an army of snowplows working around the clock.
We just take the snow from the left side and we push it all the way over to the right.
Kansas City is facing the brunt of the storm. People there are bracing for up to 12 inches of snow. That's the largest accumulation there in 20 years. This Southwest jet landed and promptly got stuck in the snow, forcing the airline to bus passengers to the terminal. In many other areas like Indiana, ice poses a huge threat.
We've had situations where people thought that because they were in a four-wheel drive vehicle that they were invincible.
On top of the overnight snowfall, up to half an inch of ice is expected in New Jersey, Connecticut, and New York City. All that ice weighing down power lines is a major concern. Mayor Bill de Blasio is urging commuters to stay inside or use mass transit. Cities and states across the Midwest and Northeast are also reeling economically in the wake of this winter's severe weather. The Midwest is facing a salt shortage.
It's very difficult getting salt right now, whether it's bag salt or bulk salt.
Just yesterday, the price doubled actually.
In many areas in the Northeast, budgets for snow removal are already wiped out. To make matters worse, a third storm is expected this weekend, further increasing the strain on communities that are already winter weary. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Well, come to Virginia Beach. It's going to be a balmy 80 down here. Somebody told me earlier. It was 37 coming in and kind of nasty, but getting warmer. Well, the winter storms just won't stop, and neither will the bad news for what's known as Obamacare. They call it the Affordable Care Act. What a joke that is. John Jessup has that story from Washington.
Pat, several million Americans will either just leave the workforce or cut back on their hours because of the way the Obamacare law is written. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office says that will mean the equivalent of the loss of around 2.25 million jobs by 2011. The White House argues that just means people will have the opportunity to find another job, while Republicans say it's yet another example of how Obamacare is bad for the job market and the economy.
The bad consequences are worse than anybody anticipated.
They're making a choice about their overall quality of life and perhaps pursuing something, either a new entrepreneurial opportunity or a new job, and they're choosing to spend more time with their family.
Conservatives say the White House is simply trying to put a positive spin on a bad report. And Pat, the director of the CBO, testifies on Capitol Hill today. No doubt he'll be grilled on that report.
You know, I remember years ago, the senator from Texas said one day they're going to be hunting these people with dogs. And I think that probably is going to be happening. The outrage in the American people is going to reach crescendo portions by the time the elections come next fall. And to think this thing is going on the way it is, but can you imagine the chutzpah of a guy standing before a camera and saying, well, these people have been laid off so they can spend more time with their children? I mean, give me a break. John.
Pat, a popular TV science educator and a leading advocate for creationism, squared off for a big debate Tuesday night. The Creation Museum in Kentucky hosted the spirited discussion between museum founder Ken Ham and Bill Nye the Science Guy. The topic? Evolution versus creationism. Ham argues the Bible tells the factual account of the beginning of the universe and the creation of humans. Nye says he and the rest of the scientific community believe a Big Bang created the Earth billions of years ago, and people have evolved over time. The event attracted attention from people in both the science and faith circles.
We are standing on millions of layers of ancient life. How could those animals have lived their entire life and formed these layers in just 4,000 years? There isn't enough time since Mr. Ham's flood for this limestone that we're standing on to have come into existence.
At the Creation Museum, we're only too willing to admit our beliefs based upon the Bible, but we also teach people the difference between beliefs and what one can actually observe and experiment with in the present. I believe we're teaching people to think critically and to think in the right terms about science.
The Creation Museum said visitors from 29 states bought seats for the debate. Pat?
You know, I don't want to downgrade any of my religious brethren, but let's face it, there was a bishop in the Middle Ages there, 1800 something, who added up the dates listed in Genesis, and he came up with the world had been around for 6,000 years. There ain't no way that's possible. You know, anybody that's in the oil business knows that he's drilling down. He drilled down 2 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles underground. You're coming into all these layers that were laid down by the dinosaurs. And we have skeletons of dinosaurs that go back about 65 million years. And to say that it all came about in 6,000 years is just nonsense. And I think the time we come off of that stuff and say this isn't possible. And, but I mean, so there was a Big Bang. So that doesn't mean it came spontaneously. Nobody knows what caused the Big Bang, but I say God did it. God's in charge of all this. God's in control, and he is the author of all life. But we've got to be realistic that the dating of Bishop Ussher just doesn't comport with anything that is found in science. And you know, you can't just totally deny the geological formations that are out there, the rock formations and all the things that go all over the world, especially the bones. And we have found a Pterosaurus rex out there in Oregon or someplace, I mean, a full skeleton. And that baby was laid down about 65 million years ago. So I mean, let's be real. Let's not make a joke of ourselves. But I don't believe in so-called evolution as is currently presented as non-theistic. I believe that God started it all, and he's in charge of all of it. But the fact that you have progressive evolution under his control, that doesn't hurt my faith at all. But this thing, you know, we just can't be playing this Ussher. Bishop Ussher, God bless him, rest his soul in peace. He was just off. John?
Pat, the legal battle over same-sex marriage is heating up in Virginia. A federal judge in Norfolk heard arguments on whether the state's voter-approved ban on same-sex marriage is constitutional. And some critics are questioning why the state attorney general isn't defending the law. Mark Martin brings us this report from the courthouse.
Dozens of protesters stood outside the federal courthouse in Norfolk, Virginia, holding signs in support of marriage between one man and one woman, and in protest of the decision by newly elected Democratic Attorney General Mark Herring to not defend the state's ban on gay marriage. In 2006, 57% of Virginia voters approved an amendment to the state constitution that bans same-sex marriage. However, in court, attorneys for the plaintiffs argued that sometimes voters and lawmakers get it wrong, and that's why a judge is in place to remedy that. An argument these gay rights advocates support.
I would applaud Attorney General Herring's decision to stand firm.
Attorney General Herring has decided not only to not defend the voter-approved ban, but also to join the side of the plaintiffs, gay couples who sued to overturn the law, saying it's not constitutional.
I believe the freedom to marry is a fundamental right, and I intend to ensure that Virginia is on the right side of history and on the right side of the law.
Yeah, it's sad that we have an attorney general who has told Christians and other believers in traditional marriage that we're on the wrong side of history, that somehow we're hateful of others, that we want to destroy the rights of others. No, we love God, we love people, but we believe that there is right and wrong.
And some argue that Herring doesn't have the right as the state attorney general to decide which laws he will or won't support.
You look at the highest law enforcement officer in this state and what he has done and the way that he is, his dereliction of duty, and I think it's unacceptable.
If he took an oath on a constitution that he did not believe in and certain parts that he wanted to change, then he should have sought a different line of work.
Virginia State Delegate Todd Gilbert agrees. He says Herring is violating his sworn duty and the will of the people. Gilbert is the co-author of a measure that passed the Virginia House Monday. It allows state lawmakers to defend a state law in court if the governor and attorney general refuse to do so.
But the attorney general does not have the authority to unilaterally make that decision for the people. And he unequivocally should not be using taxpayer resources to fight to overturn a constitutional provision that the voters adopted by an overwhelming majority. Mark Herring's decision sets a dangerous precedent for the rule of law.
The Republican Attorney General of Colorado, John Suthers, wrote in the Washington Post that his colleagues should not be able to simply decide what laws they will or won't support. He says that undermines the American system of checks and balances. He wrote, "I personally oppose a number of Colorado's laws as a matter of public policy, and a few are contrary to my religious beliefs. But as my state's Attorney General, I have defended them all and will continue to." In Virginia, the religious group Alliance Defending Freedom is now helping to defend traditional marriage.
We're hopeful that there's no lawlessness and that the laws enacted by Virginians since the 1600s of marriage being one man and one woman will be upheld, and the law will prevail and the voice of Virginians will prevail.
The judge says she will issue a ruling soon. Mark Martin, CBN News, Norfolk, Virginia.
Pat, is it pretty safe to assume that no matter what the judge rules, that it's going to be challenged by one side or the other?
Well, absolutely. You know, this Herring, I mean, that's what happens in an election, but I don't know where he comes from, but that doesn't represent Virginia. I just don't think that the views he expressed come close to the majority of the people in Virginia, and I think that the next election coming around, there's going to be a major overthrow. There was a sea change from the Republican to Democrat in this last election because of a number of factors, and for Mark Herring to pick this thing up as his first official act, I think was a mistake. But, I mean, we've got precedent now. The president is doing it all the time. In the Affordable Care Act, he decided, well, he was going to extend certain mandates. He was going to extend the provisions to individuals for a year. He was going to do this and do that and the other. The Congress was clear on what they wanted. I mean, they wrote the bill, and he should have followed it. His job is to faithfully, you know, carry out the laws of the United States of America. But he doesn't do it, nor does his Attorney General. It's a lawless situation where the elected officials can pick and choose which laws they will defend, which laws they oppose, which part of the Constitution is relevant and which isn't. That's not their job. And they swear an oath to defend and uphold the Constitution of the United States, but they're not doing it. And the president is an egregious breaker of those particular standards. And so you've got a Democrat elected official in Virginia who says, okay, my leader in Washington does it, so I can do it too. John?
The FBI rescued 16 children who were sold for sex during the Super Bowl. Authorities found the kids ages 13 to 17 in Newark, New Jersey, New York City, and New Haven, Connecticut. It also arrested 45 pimps and seized a number of guns. The FBI says the Super Bowl and other large sporting events provide big opportunities for traffickers looking to sell kids. It partnered with more than 50 law enforcement agencies this year to form the Super Bowl Sex Trafficking Task Force. A wave of the future is hitting the automobile industry in the form of cars that can talk to each other. It may sound far-fetched, but as Caitlin Burke reports, it's a safety feature the U.S. government will soon require from automakers.
More than 30,000 people die every year on U.S. highways, but new technology could make the nation's roads much safer.
Early studies indicate that V2V has the potential to help drivers avoid 70 to 80% of vehicle crashes involving unimpaired drivers.
V2V stands for vehicle to vehicle, and it allows cars to transmit their speed, position, and other information. When it senses that a car is getting too close, it alerts the driver of the possible collision.
In Atlanta, AT&T recently opened its first Drive Studio, a production center testing the concept.
With vehicle-to-vehicle communications and speech enablement, a lot of those worries, a lot of those risks, a lot of those distractions will be minimized.
A government report on the costs and benefits of these connected cars is due out this month, but requiring automakers to install it in their cars is still years away. Regardless, officials call the new technology a game changer.
When these technologies are adopted across the fleet, the results could be nothing short of revolutionary for roadway safety. And when tied to vehicle-to-infrastructure technologies, not only will they deliver safety benefits, but they will be able to save fuel and increase mobility.
Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Well, yesterday we told you studies show too much sugar is bad for your heart. Now another one shows once again that the Mediterranean diet is good for your heart. The diet is rich in fish, nuts, vegetables, and other fruit. Many other studies have also shown that the Mediterranean diet is good for your overall health. Pat, please, oh please tell me you have another demonstration in store for us today.
I'm afraid not, but I'll bring you some salmon or something to show on the show. But I think the demonstration was good yesterday. Everybody got a little feeling of how much sugar they're ingesting and how much it's bad for their hearts. This stuff is a killer. Ladies and gentlemen, the biggest health problem we have in this nation is inflammation. Inflammation causes diabetes, inflammation causes heart condition, high blood pressure, and numerous other diseases, probably including Alzheimer's. The good doctor who came up with the Mediterranean diet has been on this show a couple of times. He's a very articulate gentleman. And the Mediterranean diet works. It works. Olive oil, and vegetables, fresh vegetables, and fruit, and nuts, and berries, micronutrients, it works. They work. And processed food doesn't do it. And what you get at the fast food restaurants don't do it. Well, there's a company called Wendy's, but this does not pertain to the lovely co-hostess we have with us now. And you might have seen Wendy on the Fox News channel yesterday. She was on a panel discussion on The Real Story with Gretchen Carlson, talking about the relationship between religious freedom and economic prosperity. Here's what some of the things that our dear co-hostess said.
I think it's the law of reaping and sowing. I mean, when you sow religious freedom, you're going to reap a happier people, and then you're going to reap a better economy. You know, I think it just makes perfect sense. The Bible says where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. People love being free. They love their freedom. That makes them happier. That makes them better workers. That makes them more productive.
Wow, good stuff.
It was so much fun. I was sitting in the middle between Rabbi Shmuley, who you know is a good friend of yours, he says hello, and an atheist, and they were kind of fighting each other, and I was just, you know, kind of, but it was a lot. There they are right now. That was the faith panel.
Extraordinary guy. He's come up with some sort of weird stuff on homosexuality that it isn't biblical. He claims it is, but he wanted me to write a book. He was doing a series of books, and so he got me going on a book, and it came out to be The Greatest Virtue, which is a pretty good book, but we never his series never got up on that.
But we didn't get to see Gretchen. I think we've got a picture of Gretchen too.
Yeah,
she's wonderful. She was here at Regent University speaking just a few months ago, and we're a fan of hers.
Facebook is more popular than the Bible in America. A recent study found more Americans check Facebook daily than read the good book. As the social network celebrates its 10th anniversary, it boasts more monthly users worldwide than most continents have people. Facebook has 757 million daily active users, 19% in the U.S. and Canada, making that more than 143 million people checking Facebook daily, compared to only 40 million people in the same region reading the Bible daily, according to a 2006 CBS News poll. Stop spying on private citizens. That's the message state lawmakers are sending to the federal government and local law enforcement. They're angry the National Security Agency has been tracking Americans' digital activities and that the federal government isn't doing enough to stop it. At least 14 states across the country are taking steps to prevent government surveillance of ordinary Americans. Supporters say the measures are needed to preserve liberty. Well, you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.